choose a time, any earlier and you get into dinner, any later you get into bedtime, or either one of those things could be happening right now. So we'll just do the best we can and record for those who can't make it. Welcome to Montessori Moment Live. This is the second one of the year. We had one in October and we'll have another one in April. And my name is Jessica Ostrom. I'm the Regional Director of Montessori Education for Endeavor Schools here in Minnesota. And just tiny background about me. I have been doing Montessori work for about 25 years. Absolutely the honor of my life to serve Montessori children and staff and families for all of these years. My previous school I was at for 9 years, and we served toddler through junior high. And then my son, who's pictured there, he went to Montessori all the way through junior high, so through 8th grade. And I've been in this role here at Endeavor for just over 3 years. And my background, my educational background is that I have an Association Montessori International, so AMI certification for 3 to 6 year olds, so the primary level from the Montessori Center of Minnesota. My bachelor's degree in horticulture from the University of Minnesota, and my master's degree in environmental education from Hamline University in St. Paul. And then I did the 0 to 3 training, Montessori training from Mighty, which is our very own Montessori Training Center. So that picture at the Grand Canyon was taken over a year ago. That is my son and I there. And that on the right is him when he was the age of your children at the on the North Shore. And I just love that picture so much. And so I always like to squeeze a little picture of him into these presentations. A quick introduction to our academic team for Endeavor Schools, our Montessori sort of thread of it. We've got Dr. Amy Brereton. She's our Chief Academics Officer, and this is something that is really special about Endeavor Schools, that we have a Chief Academics Officer. And Dr. Amy she is just so knowledgeable about so many different pedagogies, about communication and listening and leadership. I mean, I couldn't ask for a better big boss up there. And then we've got Jana Morgan Herman, Director of Montessori Education, who is kind of a Montessori celebrity. She's published books. She's got a podcast. She also runs our training center, Mighty, the training center that I spoke about a minute ago, and has been doing this forever and ever as well. And then Priya Rajagopalan, she's the other regional director of Montessori Education, and she supports the schools on the West Coast, the Montessori schools on the West Coast. So we've got quite a little team here for the Montessori part of our academic team. A quick outline of what we're doing tonight. We'll have a review. If you were on in October, we had a more in-depth sort of overview of what Montessori is. We'll do a quick review because I want to get on to our 2 learning focuses tonight. One is work and play and what that means and how they interplay, no pun intended, with each other. And then what many of you are probably here for is the spotlight on toilet learning. This is one of the most challenging things for parents of young children to sort of wrap their heads around and their arms around, let's face it. And we'll talk about that tonight as well. So part 1 is our little Montessori overview. And yesterday was the 118th anniversary of the first children's house in Rome. Dr. Montessori based her method on 50 years of research and observation. She was one of the first female medical doctors in Italy in the early 1900s. This is an actual picture of the Casa dei Bambini, or children's house, that was started in Rome in 1907. It is still in operation today. In fact, one of our teachers from Peaceful Valley Montessori in Eden Prairie is going there in a week or 2, and she actually took this picture. She was there a long time ago and took this picture, and she's going back to Rome to visit again to the first children's house in Rome, which is going to be such an amazing experience. When Montessori's findings and philosophy are highly influential in all kinds of early childhood programs, and there are Montessori schools in almost every country in the world. There are 12 of them here in Minnesota, 12 Endeavor schools in Minnesota. We have 2 Peaceful Valley Montessori academies, one in Eden Prairie, one in Golden Valley. We have 2 Wood Park Montessori schools, one in Burnsville, one in Savage. And then we have 8 step-by-step Montessori schools, one in Brooklyn Park, Chaska, Corcoran, Edina, Maple Grove, Plymouth, St. Anthony, and Wayzata. And if you're on this call, you have a connection to at least one of these schools. So welcome, and we're so glad that you're here tonight. Now, all of our schools are working towards these 5 Montessori essentials. This is the goal. This is what we're working towards. So we want to have a Montessori trained adult in every room. And we offer a lot of different levels of Montessori training, and we'll get to that in a different slide. But the goal is that we do understand that Montessori takes specific technical training. So we want to get that training to our staff. We want to have a full set of Montessori materials in each classroom. That varies by level. So a children's house, that's the 3 to 6-year-old program, or what some people call preschool, that the room can feel very full. There's a lot of items on the shelves, and it just feels like a very full classroom. You move to a toddler environment and it's a little bit more of a pared down feeling. Everything is, the shelves should be one level less. Everything is just a little bit simpler. And then you move to an infant environment and they can feel downright empty sometimes. They aren't empty, of course, but they feel like they are because there's a lot less stuff in them. And that is because we recognize that space is a material for infants. Infants need to be able to move freely all around. We have removed almost all in our classrooms, in our infant rooms, exercisers and bumbo seats and all these different contraptions that people put babies in, but it really restricts their freedom of movement. And we want to make sure that they have access to space. So we have a few things on each shelf and we rotate it regularly to keep the interest up, but we don't want to fill it with a bunch of stuff. We have mixed age groupings. So the infant room is 0 to 16 months. Now that is a big, big difference between a 6-week-old and a 16-month-old. And so being able to facilitate a classroom of that wide of an age range, that's where we get the Montessori training, the need for the Montessori training. Toddlers, again, 16 to 33 months, they're doubling in age in the time that they're in the toddler room. So we really need to have adults who understand how to serve the 16-month-old and the 33-month-old and everything in between. Then we get to Children's House, and it is 33 months through kindergarten. So we do offer kindergarten in our classrooms, and the Montessori program is designed to be a 3-year program for the Children's House. The first year, the children are really putting down roots. The second year, they're growing up nice and tall. And the third year is when the fruits and flowers come, if we're going to use a plant analogy. But it's designed to be a 3-year program. That doesn't mean they're not going to get a fabulous education if they're there for just 2 years. But if possible, we highly recommend that they stay for the kindergarten year. That is really where all of the foundational learning that they've had blooms into this unbelievable explosion of writing and reading and higher level mathematics and geography and all kinds of amazing things that happen at that level. And their leadership and their mentorship and their social emotional growth is massive in that third year. So mixed age groupings. Then we have child-directed activities. So we do have Endeavor Plus, which are our after-school programs, or things that you can sign up for, like STEM or art or sports. But then we also have what we want to have is the uninterrupted work cycle, which goes into the next part. So we don't have a lot of child-directed, or we don't have a lot of adult-directed activities during the day. We do have circle time, but not more than really once a day. And we try to give the children that freedom to choose their work, freedom to choose their activities, to be able to make choices. It can be really, really difficult to never have the opportunity to make a choice in life. And that is a really, really important skill that we want to give to these young children. So we have child-directed activities in an uninterrupted work time. And we'll talk about that word work. That's one of our topics for tonight. But we don't want them to refrain from taking out longer work because, they might have to clean up for music right away, or, they might have to clean up for dance or ASL or karate or whatever, what have you. So we move those activities towards the end of the day. They have a lot of value to them, but what we are is Montessori schools. So we really value that uninterrupted work time. And so that, I was in a school the other day and I was seeing children doing long story writing and long math work that takes a very long time. And I was just marveling at that with the staff in there. This couldn't happen if we had it all chopped up with all kinds of adult-directed activities in the morning. We really, really need to have that uninterrupted work time so children have this feeling of endless time where they can work with something for as long as they want. And back to the idea of Montessori training, I just wanted to quickly run over the things that Endeavor offers so that the staff can grow into their own career. We are able to build our own Montessorians through training and support opportunities such as St. Catherine University, which is St. Kate's. They offer children's house training, and that is a full year program, full AMS certification. And Montessori Institute for Teacher Education at Endeavor, that's Mighty, they offer AMS certification from the 0 to 3 level. That's our own Montessori training center that I was talking about that Jana is the director of, my boss is the director of. Center for Guided Montessori Studies is CGMS. So they offer shorter courses, a 10-week and a 12-week for either 0 to 3 or 3 to 6-year-old staff that work with that age group. And we have workshops at the Montessori Center of Minnesota. So we're very lucky to have two Montessori training centers in the Twin Cities, one being St. Kate's and one being Montessori Center of Minnesota. Then we have professional development days. We have trainings on a platform called Rise, and then we do observation and consultation in the classrooms as well. So lots and lots and lots of training that gets kind of scaffolded and built into a bunch of opportunities for our staff to grow their career. Okay, so back to our little review. The Montessori method is child-centered education. It's really easy to say that, but what does it mean? So Dr. Montessori flipped the narrative that children are these empty vessels that adults need to fill with knowledge. Instead, she uncovered that each human is born with an inner teacher, driving their development, curiosity, and desire to learn. Children actually teach themselves, and it takes special training to understand this and how to prepare the environment and foster a culture in the room where children are free to be able to actually teach themselves and engage with the environment at their own free will. The learning will always be more impactful if it is freely chosen by the child versus prescribed by the adult. At the top of the importance is the child's independence, concentration, balancing of freedom and limits, their sense of order. All of these things provide comfort and security. So these adults are trained to understand how to create that type of learning environment, nurture and cultivate that type of learning environment so children can really feel comfortable and secure and then freely explore, which is the catalyst for the development that we were talking about. So we're going to get right into it. This is comes from a conference that I went to in Atlanta, a Montessori conference, and I adapted it for this presentation because it really spoke to me about these concepts of school and home and work and play. So we often discuss the Montessori materials as work. So let's dive deeper into that term. Children hear adults in their life talking about going to work or saying they have some work to do. And while adults, we might have a connotation of drudgery to the word work. We are very careful not to pass that on because children feel pride in their work and we want to help them preserve that feeling. Also, children and imitation go hand in hand. So it makes sense that the word work is often just used to describe the Montessori activities. But here is the bottom line. To a child, whatever they're doing at that moment, if it is freely chosen, is serving a developmental purpose. Exploring something new, developing understanding about an aspect of the world around them, developing language skills, and as we'll discuss in the next Montessori Moment live in the spring, building their repertoire of automatic movements. So the repertoire of automatic movements is something that I wanted to point out, just do a quick little tangent about that. There are so many opportunities for different types of movement in the Montessori environments. So whether it is fine motor, large motor, carrying trays of varying weights and sizes and depths and materials and reaching and grabbing things from high, middle, and low, all of the things that they are doing as they freely choose their work and go through the classroom This young lady has decided, she thought that the shelves were dusty, and she decided to take all the materials off of the shelf, put them on a working mat, dust the shelves, and put them all back. And this was completely her own decision to do. She has a pride in her environment, a care of the environment that is built into her, and she really wanted to clean and tidy those shelves. And so, do we call this work or do we call this play? What is she doing? And what are all of these movements that she is building up? This idea of art in the Montessori environment. So when a child feels creative and they want to do some artwork, they'll go to the art shelf and there will be any number of art activities they could choose. They could choose a cutting work, a drawing work, a gluing work, a color mixing with dropper bottles, all different types, sewing works. So think about all of the different movements that they are developing. And then think about how we as adults go through our life with so many things that we've automatically built up the muscle memory to do without even thinking about it. Most of us can just get in the car and drive without literally thinking about, okay, where's my foot? Where's the gas? Where's the brake? Or what is even the directions to work? Many of us just go there without really thinking about it. So we've automated those movements. And the more opportunity that we give young children to be able to look at something, engage without even picking it up yet, how much force they need to do to pick it up, writing without having to think about the sound of the letter, without having to think about how do I hold this pencil, all the typing that we do as adults without really thinking about it, or cooking, when we're cooking our favorite 5 meals that we kind of rotate through our menu all the time versus getting a brand new recipe with brand new ingredients and new techniques that takes a lot more mental energy, right? So we're giving the children all of these freedoms and all of these opportunities for movement so it can free their mind for higher thinking. We often hear, kids go to college for the higher level thinking, but they don't know how to do their laundry, or they don't know how to, source food or cook things, or, figure out life, right? They might be really good at school, but not so good at life. So we want to give them all of these opportunities, which free them up for higher level thinking. That was my little tangent of the repertoire of automatic movements, as opposed to, for example, when I was talking about the art, when we do, cookie cutter art projects and we sit children down and give them a project that there's very little creativity involved in, and they create a craft that kind of looks like everybody else's, there really isn't this variety of movements and thought processes that go through it. And so, we want to there is always a place for crafts in school, but we want to really focus more on art and technique and being able to use materials to then express whatever you have inside of you out onto your artwork. But I digress. So work or play by any name both contribute to development. So let's explore the connection between activity at school and activity at home. So where do we have room to allow for the characteristics of play and work to have more time to flourish? So the key word here is time. We allow uninterrupted time for children to choose activities, and while time is likely short at home, where can we make more space for this as well? This is sort of the gist of what I wanted to get to with families, because especially when it gets dark so early, it's already pitch black outside my window, and has been for quite some time. Where do they have the opportunity to have just free time for play? There's a lot of activities and things that children are signed up for and do, but we really what they need, what they really truly need is this uninterrupted time, just like we give them in the morning at school, to be able to take something out, make a huge display of train tracks and just go for it and spend hours doing it without anybody saying, oh, it's time to do this, it's time to do that. How can we allow them to have more time to just be and just play? Because the characteristics of what we traditionally think of as play and what Montessori materials offer are in alignment with each other. So when you love your work, they share these same opportunities. So first of all, choice and autonomy. When something is freely chosen and it fosters independence and self-motivation, that is very appealing to children. Children often are not given a lot of opportunity to make choice and have autonomy. We've got families, we've got people, we've got places to go, we've got things to do. So when can we make space for them to have choice and autonomy? Engagement and flow. I love when I get involved in something and suddenly I look at my watch and it's 3 hours later. You know, when was the last time that we really lost track of time because we were so absorbed in the activity? I'll tell you when it was for me, and it was last night. I decided I got some new pots for my plants, and oh, I just thought I was going to do a little simple potting. It ended up being like this 4-hour huge mess, moving small plants to bigger plants and small cuttings to the small pots, and it turned into this massive ordeal, and my teenager was like, "I'm going to bed. What are you doing?" I said, "I got myself in too deep with this mess, and I can't possibly go to sleep while there's soil all over my floor." So I had to finish it, but it couldn't have happened if I didn't really love what I was doing. Um, so we want to give children time at school and at home to lose track of time and get absorbed by the activity. Again, that's why we move those specialist classes out of the morning work cycle and into the end of the day, because that 3 hours goes by really fast when you are totally engaged in your work. Number three is social interaction. So collaboration, negotiation, communication, developing social skills. I love these two photos on the side here. They are of the exact same process, about 100 years apart from each other. The black and white photo is from a Montessori school, and the children are washing dishes outside, and they are in an assembly line. They are focused. They're wearing their aprons. They've like got it going on. What their connection to their work is something really important. And I love the curious onlookers from above. They're just so like to just want to see what's happening. And if you look in the picture below, that is at Step by Step Montessori School in Edina, doing the exact same thing. Children's interests are not really different from 100 years ago. What gets them their juices flowing, what gets them excited is being able to do real things they see the adults in their lives doing. It makes them feel a sense of pride and dignity and integrity, and what they're doing is very important. And I love in the bottom photo, you've got your curious onlookers also. I mean, this just shows how timeless the Montessori method is. It really, children, technology has changed, but children's development hasn't changed. Their developmental needs haven't changed. Hands-on learning, engaging in the three-dimensional world. So we intentionally do not have any screens in our schools. We don't show them videos. We don't show them cartoons or clips or YouTube videos. We want to give the children this opportunity to engage with each other and their environment and the three-dimensional world. We know they have the rest of their life for worksheets and learning from screens. We know that at the 0 to 6-year-old level, the work of the hands is what the mind remembers. So we want to give them as many of those opportunities as possible. Creativity and problem solving, being joyful, curious, experimental, child-centered, and meaningful. All of these things are examples of the characteristics of play, which also, when you love your work, it's the same kind of feelings that come from it. So there's no real difference as far as children go when it comes to work and play. That's what they're drawn to, and they are freely chosen, is the big work that they're doing at that moment. So take just a moment to consider, are there circumstances nowadays that lead children to need more play in their lives? Many of these children were born during COVID. They just were very isolated. They were around people with masks. They couldn't engage with new people or a lot of other children. And COVID is just one factor. Other factors just being all so much screen time, all the activities. There's just so much going on. So is there, and safety, right? When a lot of us, the adults on this call, were younger, it was safe to just be outside until the streetlights went out and then you had to go home. But nowadays it's not the same. So There are definitely circumstances nowadays that lead children to need more play in their lives. And the ability to play is critical to not only being happy, but also to sustaining social relationships and being a creative, innovative person. When I was potting all those plants last night, sometimes when I'm cooking, I'll put on a cooking show, even if I'm not making the same thing as the person on the cooking show. It's like we're cooking together. But it doesn't give my brain a lot of time to just have its own original thoughts. And last night when I was potting those plants, I intentionally didn't put on a show or even put on music. It was just me and the plants, and my mind went to places that it doesn't normally get a chance to go to when it's engaged in some sort of outside stimuli, like a show or some music. And it was really, really lovely. And it's just really rare for me anyway to have that opportunity. And I want to try to give that to myself more. But there's what Dr. Montessori talked about in young children is called a sensitive periods for different things. Sometimes you'll see an explosion into language, an explosion into writing or reading or talking or running around when they first learn how to walk, right? The sensitive period for meaningful activity is anything they engage with is meaningful to them at this time. So 0 to 6 is a sensitive period, and we want to extend that. We want them to grow into lifelong lovers of what they do and learning. Play is often misunderstood. It's dismissed as lacking a serious or practical purpose. But tell that to a musician or an athlete, or the people who are the fans who love to watch people just play. Um, I mean, I am willing to bet that many of the people on this call watched the Vikings the other day. I'm sorry it wasn't a better outcome, but that is a big deal in Minnesota. People love that, or the Wild, all kinds of sports people love to play or go to concerts. So we must give them time to play when they're on so much screen time, which does not increase imagination. Screen time is often and I'm not trying to shame anybody about screen time. I know the children get it. There's a lot to be said for it. But it sometimes tends to be the glue that holds all the other activities together. When they're not doing something intentional, they're on a screen. As soon as they get in the car, handed a screen. At the grocery store, handed a screen. And they're not seeing the world around them. And it doesn't increase imagination. So I have a friend who was a Montessori junior high teacher, and she was an English creative writing teacher. And she said it was really difficult because young teenagers were all of their writing had to do with characters that they knew from cartoons or from superheroes or things like that. They weren't coming up with their original ideas. They were just sort of regurgitating other people's original ideas. And we want to give them opportunities to form their own ideas. So think about what did you play as a child? Where did you play? So for myself, my neighbor just across, we were both on the corner of an avenue in Duluth, Minnesota, where I grew up. And she had a big spruce tree in her front yard, and it had these big branches that hung down, which created this beautiful fort in there that we could play in. That's where we played all the time. We played school, we played house, family, restaurant, store, zoo, forts, digging holes, finding worms, collecting rocks. And those, I'm willing to bet that most of us on this call, the adults, had play opportunities when we were young, and we likely played a lot of those things. But what if children grew up not having those memories? What if children grew up without those opportunities? Children nowadays often go straight from long days at school to soccer, piano, swim lessons, etc., then dinner, then bedtime. Maybe hopefully there's a bath in there or something like that, but likely screens as well. So what we'd love to do is give you permission to free yourself from this during early childhood. And there's a lot of pressure to get children into sports very early. And if that's your jam, there's no shame in that at all. But if you can, allow the children just free time to play at home. And we definitely give that to them in the morning, free time to choose their activities at school. And there are different kinds of play. There are all different kinds of play: pretend, dramatic, symbolic, imaginative, creative, risky, rough and tumble. therapeutic, imitation. I mean, does the toddler know that that block they're holding up to their ear isn't actually a phone and there isn't actually another person on the other end of it? Do they know? I don't know. Dr. Montessori said the true basis of the imagination is reality. So much of what children play is based on reality. For example, lining up chairs in a line to be a bus or a train, playing restaurant or school. And children that do not know the difference between fantasy and reality, they may not be safe physically or emotionally. So physically, a child, breaking his arm because he thinks he's Superman. And I have a just a awful story about that. When I was a children's house guide many, many years ago, there was a set of twins in my class, and we found ourselves at the same family camp weekend. Up north, there was a camp near Ely that was a family camp, YMCA Camp de Nord. And I didn't know that my students were going to be at that camp, but I was working there at the camp for the weekend, and I was so excited to see them. And we had this great weekend, and it was either Memorial Day or Labor Day. And, if you've ever driven down from up north in Minnesota on one of those Sundays or Mondays, a long weekend, the traffic is so bad. A 5-hour drive took us 8 hours, and we left at the same time. And then when I got to school the next day, I was so excited to see the children and say, "Oh, it was so fun to be with you over the weekend. That was such a nice surprise." And one of them showed up with a cast on his wrist. And I was like, "What happened? I literally just saw you yesterday." And apparently he had been, the drive was getting so long. The parents were just like, "I can't take it anymore." And they gave him a Superman cartoon to watch on his iPad or something. And when they finally got home, he decided to leap out of his, or fly out of his minivan, to pretend he was Superman, like what he had just seen, then falling down and breaking his arm. So then after 8 hours in the car, they had to pack it up and go to the emergency room and be there for 4 or 5 more hours. Emotionally, children can get really terrified of the monster under the bed or something in the closet. So it's really, really important that we help children at this young age. There's so much time in elementary school for all the imagination in the world, but at the young age of 0 to 6, we want to help them understand what's real so that those things later aren't scary, aren't confusing. They actually know, okay, this is this is our imagination. They're more free to play when they know what is real, because fantasy doesn't automatically equal creativity, as we talked about with my friend in her creative writing class. So in a Montessori classroom, we have a lot of play ideas that are blended into the activities. We have I Spy sound games. So I spy with my little eye, something that starts with S. And we do beginning, middle, end, all the sounds. We do rhyming games. We do what's missing. So you've probably seen in the children's houses a pink tower, and the children will build the pink tower, and then everyone closes their eyes and one child removes one of the blocks, and then they straighten all the rest of the cubes, and then the children open their eyes and have to guess which one is missing based on their visual discrimination of dimension. They write secret messages to friends, do creative writing, bookmaking, label the environment, silly sentences. In practical life is sort of Montessori's, what we do. Instead of dramatic play, we give them real things to do. So instead of play kitchens with play food, we let them do real food preparation, having an indoor picnic with a friend. The teacher that was giving this talk said that she had pedicure work in her classroom. So the two children, one would invite the other for a pedicure, and they would have them sit on a chair and put their foot in a warm basin of soapy water, and they would scrub and dry and put lotion on each other's feet. And it was like just really an opportunity to nurture each other and care for each other. Sewing pillows and eye pillows and all kinds of things. We have math games like the stamp game, the change game, language activities like the orientation game. All of these are part of the Montessori method. The silence activity, where everyone lies down and closes their eyes, and then one person or the adult rings bells that are made of different materials like ceramic or wood or brass or glass or metal, and the children see if they can tell the difference between those different materials that the bells are made out of. walking on the line. How can we walk on this line while we are balancing a beanbag on our hand or carrying a marble on a spoon or things like that. Children are indeed learning reading, math, geography, science, etc. But because it is joyful and freely chosen, their day embodies the characteristics of play. Wow, what a great way to spend the day, I would say. So, in conclusion, time plus open-ended opportunities at school and at home, play is something that is freely chosen, where time is not a factor, and when concentration occurs, development is happening. So you can see these photos. These are all from Montessori schools, all from our schools, playing outside, teaching each other letters and sounds, an infant just observing, a child with a parts of the body puzzle, children scooping seeds out of a pumpkin. It's all joyful because the children chose to do it themselves, and there's no difference in feeling to the child between work and play when they are that into what they're doing. And I have a little video here. 1 second, I will pause for one moment. So this might be a friend that anybody at Wood Park Montessori in Burnsville recognizes. Miss Misty shared the video with me. And this child, it's going to take about a minute and a half, and I promise you there's a happy ending. But let yourself feel how long this is taking and how much, as the adults, we have this urge to swoop in. But watch what happens in this video. Bear with me for about a minute while we watch this. So I'm sure as we were watching that, just out of love, we want to swoop in and just help them, right? But if we had, we would have taken away this child's opportunity to have that joyful moment and have that smile at the end, that sense of accomplishment. It really is ingrained in the method to allow children the time to have a little bit of peaceful struggle, right? This child wasn't melting down. They weren't, screaming for help. They wanted to do it. And by letting them do it, he was able to have that moment at the end. So what does it take? time, trust, opportunity, patience, development is happening through joy. So, letting children do things for themselves is a really, really important thing to do. So now we're going to get to the main event, and it's just after 7:10. So I will go through this, but I get a lot of questions about toilet learning. So toileting it can be one of the most confusing things for parents of young children because there's a lot of mixed messages coming from family, our own experiences, other caregivers, society, diaper commercials, lots and lots and lots of information coming at us about toilet learning. And there's also this need for convenience, right? I mean, we're busy, we're running, we're going here and there. So it's easier for the adults just to keep them in diapers or pull-ups, but it actually is counter to their developmental needs. So we'll talk more about that. Most cultures incorporate toilet learning right from the beginning. It's really, the US is one of the few places where children tend to stay in diapers or pull-ups well into the preschool years. The diaper companies are profiting big time from this. So consider how much money we spend, $30, $40 a box for these things. Think of how far that money can go if we could buy all kinds of things for our family. If we were not having to spend money on diapers and pull-ups all the time. So we are holding children back from their natural development by waiting. When we wait out of, pressure or convenience, we often fall back on our own old tricks like rewards, like, you get an M&M if you go potty, those kinds of things. We don't need to do those things if we allow them the opportunity to toilet learn early. And we'll talk about when that is. This is how we know we've waited too long if we find ourselves resorting to those kind of bribery, basically. So when is the best time to do toileting? This may come as a surprise, but it's as soon as children can walk, they have control over their lower half. So infant and young toddler is the best time when they are curious and they're often agreeable to trying new things. So it's best to start before what we call the age of opposition, where it's natural for the child to say no to just about everything. Do you want to go to bed? No. Do you want to have some snack? No. Do you want to go to the park? No. Of course they do want to go to the park, but they just like to say no. So we want to start before that happens. But remember, it is never, ever, ever too late. So wherever your child is, meet them there and get the process started. As soon as they can walk, they can start sitting on potties, just like this child right here. Those Baby Bjorn potties are available on Amazon for about $25. And it is one of the best investments when a child's body is very small. It's hard. It's, when children are kind of precariously balancing themselves on the toilet and they're afraid of the flush, and it's okay to just you get a little potty chair. It's very then it makes it really accessible to them. So creating the space is really, really, it can be really nice. So the bathroom is a place where everyone with toddlers spends a lot of time. So make it enjoyable. We can have art on the walls. We can have it fresh smelling. You want to have a low chair or stool for the child and the adult, so they can sit on a stool to open, to pull up and down their pants. Cotton training underpants are thicker than regular underpants. They have about 3 layers in the crotch area. And there are even training underpants with a plastic outer layer on it, but the wetness is felt. So that is the key for a child to start making that connection between the sensation they feel right before it gets very warm and wet in their pants, right? As opposed to pull-ups, which wick away the moisture right away. And then the child, they could just go on with their day without ever even changing it, other than, it being really, really heavy hanging on their little body. But the pull-ups, they're a huge, huge obstacle to toilet learning. So my suggestion is that, especially if your child's in children's house, just take the plunge. We're just going to take the plunge, and we're going to start in toddler as well with toilet learning. So we want to be able to follow through at home. But we know that children are with us more waking hours than they are even with their own family. So we would love to provide this opportunity for children because we know that developmentally, this is the time for them. So routine, consistency, follow through, you get the idea. These are the most important pieces. Between every transition, so when they're starting, it's roughly 45-minute intervals, after we wake up, before we go to sleep, all of those types of things before we leave the house, when we get to where we're going. Behavior is situational. So children respond to the expectations that are set at home or at school. Have you ever, had your child, walked into your child's classroom or watched them through the window and saw them really working and concentrating and doing something, and you're like, oh my gosh, they don't do that at home? Or, sometimes we will, as teachers, sometimes we run into our families out in the world, like at the store or something, and a child is having a total meltdown over not getting, that popsicle that he wanted or whatever. And we're thinking, oh my goodness, he never would have that kind of a meltdown at school. So it really is so situational. So the more we can be in alignment with our expectations at home or at school, the better it will be for the child, and the more happy our lives will be too. All of us, all of the adults. So wearing just underwear and a top is helpful at first. So you see this child's at home. He's just wearing undies and his shirt. Just dive right in. Get yourself some carpet cleaner, because you're probably going to need to do a little spritzing and patting down, but it's okay. I mean, it's really, really not unusual for a child to be totally potty trained, except maybe at nap or in nighttime, by 18 months. And life will be so much easier for yourself when you don't have to deal with diapers. It's just, and the child will just be fresh and clean and happy. So, talking about it, the way that we talk with children really matters. It's a natural human process, not something to be described as icky or stinky. There should be no shame attached to it. Nothing, no other descriptions other than this is just a natural part of life. So I see you have wet pants. Let's go change them. Instead of you've had an accident. There's a little slight difference in the connotation. And it's important to ask, or not to ask, but rather to state, now that you've gotten up from your nap, it's time to go use the potty. That's not in question. This is just what we're doing, right? So as we can formulate our communication with children, this is just what we're doing. That's how we sort of like talk about it. Just like at a certain time, it's time to go to bed. At a certain time, it's time to eat. A certain time, it's time to go to school. Now that you've woken up from your nap, it's time to go potty. So what families can do to support toileting at school, and I've got 2 QR codes here. So if you point your camera at these QR codes, I mean, and there's nothing special about these undies or this wet bag. You can find these just on Amazon. But please send plenty of cotton underwear, extra clothes, and a wet bag. And then we can send home all the wet undies, and they can be washed and brought back to school. Make sure to label everything, because there's going to be a lot of undies for all the children. But trust the process and follow through at home. These are things that you can do at home to support toileting at school. Read books at home about it. Allow them to see that this is just what we do. Allow them to see you going to the bathroom. This isn't gross. You can't get arrested for this, I promise. There's nothing weird about letting your children see you use the toilet. They need to see that this is just what we do, right? And they'll see each other doing it at school. This is just, again, this is how children learn. This is how children learn how to speak, by just hearing people talk. They learn how to use the toilet by watching people use the toilet. So these are some great books, these ones at the bottom here. Let's see here. But providing the opportunities, again, we want to keep it perfectly normal. There's no rewards, no M&M if you poop in the potty, no, suckers or lollipops, and certainly no punishments, no shame, no, oh, you had another accident, none of that, right? They're all working hard on this. And it's natural when they move up a level. So when they go to Children's House, for example, they might regress a little in this and start having some, wet pants again. That is because they are just in a new environment. They're not being escorted to the toilet as often as they were in toddler. So don't worry about that. That's perfectly natural, and we'll just continue on, and it's okay. And some parents get like they feel bad. They don't want us to have to deal with it. And so they just send them in pull-ups. But I'll tell you, and we talked about this today at one of our meetings, that when you sign up to work with 0 to 6-year-olds, you're signing up to work with poop and pee and blood and vomit and snot. And that's just part of it. So it's natural for us. This is what we do. And we don't think of it as yucky or gross. I mean, we might in a private moment with ourselves or our coworkers or our school leaders, but it really is just part of it. And we never want to put that sort of negative connotation on the children about it. So our attitude affects their attitude, which affects the outcome. So we want to make it relaxing and pleasant. This is not something that can be forced. And these children, they're in it for the long haul. These two are going to sit there until they're ready and they've really, done their business and they're ready to move on. There's, at home, we should be able to let them sit for as long as possible. And remember, we can't rush children to learn to walk or talk, but we can hinder it by having babies in a lot of contraptions that sort of delays their development as far as their strength and the equilibrium and balance that they're building to be able to walk. We can hinder it, but we really, really can hinder toileting independence. We can prevent toileting independence from happening by simply not allowing the opportunity. So let's allow it. And again, starting earlier is going to be so much easier. You'll be shocked at how much easier it is to start earlier than waiting too long. But if you've waited, no time like the present. What did they say about planting a tree? The best time to plant it was 80 years ago. The second best time is right now. So just get started. And thank you. And we've got 6 minutes. If anybody has any questions at all, I'm happy to stop sharing, and I would be absolutely happy to answer any questions if anybody wants to either just unmute themselves or use the little reactions button at the bottom and do a little raising of a hand like this. But I really want to thank you so much for coming. And again, I'll hang on in case there's any questions. Otherwise, the next Montessori Moment live is April 1st, I believe, April Fool's Day. But don't be shy if you've got any questions. Thank you, Kim. Thank you for coming. Elizabeth, go right ahead. Are you able to unmute?
There we go. I figured it out.
Oh, super.
Question. We kind of, our son, we did, toilet learning, and we went with the whole 3-day naked method. And any advice on just a child that's just not motivated? He's just
How
not.
old is he?
He is now, oh gosh, he's almost 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's over 2.5. And the first time we did it, we tried it like a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we did the naked weekend and we thought he was getting it. And then we put him in underwear, and we even did like the underwear with the pull up over it so he could still feel wet, kind of like the training pants.
Mm-hmm.
And he just didn't seem to be bothered at all that his underwear was soaked and was happy to be sitting in pee pants all day long.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
they kind of say, like, when we did it with our daughter, she was so just internally motivated and felt so proud of herself. And he just doesn't seem to care.
Yeah.
Any advice on that?
Well, so this is a great question because I would say remember that all children are very, very different from each other. So a really good example is when I was a Montessori teacher, I was in 4th to 6th, I was in upper elementary. So I had 4th to 6th graders, and one of them had an older sibling who was just learning how to drive. And she was very, very, very observant. And always when she was in the car with her parents, super observant. So when she started to drive, she knew exactly how to drive everywhere. And a few years later, when the child that was in my class, she never paid any attention. So when she started driving, she didn't know how to she didn't know how to go anywhere. They just had a completely different sort of personality and these different characteristics. But so it's not uncommon at all that you'd have one child that takes to it really easily. And I will also say, again, no time like the present, but it is a bit late to be starting. If,
Mhm.
not to say that it would have been, super easy back at 16 months. We never know because every child's different. But the thing that I would say is not to give up. If he doesn't care, then we have to care for him. We have to
Mhm.
go. I wouldn't put the pull up over underpants though. That's actually really confusing for children. I would do one or the other and just deal with the consequences. There are actually inserts that you can put in a car seat too if you're worried about in the car, but when you're at home, I would just have him in
Oh,
underwear and go
yeah.
for it.
Yeah, yeah, we didn't do that. We just did that for a travel day. Just
Mhm.
but the point of it was he just wasn't bothered that he was wet.
Yeah.
Was yeah.
And that's the thing is that he could just be really engaged in the things he's doing, and that's the last thing on his mind. And he's gotten used to it now at this point, right? Because that's another thing when children stop wearing pull ups or diapers, to get used to not having that tight, bulky thing around their bottom all the time. Can you imagine like how different that must feel? And
Yeah.
so he's just used to it at this point, but don't give up. And definitely if he's 2.5, then he'll be moving on to Children's House in a little while.
Mhm.
And, we don't want him in pull-ups in Children's House for lots and lots of reasons. He's
Right.
gonna want to feel that dignity of being one of the children in Children's House, right? Like that's
Mhm.
different than being in toddler or infant. And being one of the few that are wearing those is, hopefully it'll just go quickly at that point. But it's
Yeah.
also really like classrooms aren't designed to have uh an adult in the bathroom with bathroom accidents all the time because
Mhm.
we only have certain number of adults and we have a lot of small parts and we have a lot to keep track of in the classroom. And when one adult is pulled into the bathroom all the time, that can be really challenging. We obviously meet that challenge when, because that's our job. But I would just not give up on him and I would just go for underwear and take him intentionally to the restroom every 45 minutes or so.
Sure.
Um, and make that part of the routine. Again,
Mhm.
not asking, do you want to go? Oh, it's time to go use the bathroom. Let's go. You
Yeah.
know, I'm
Okay.
not going to say that it's going to be easy. I'm not trying to sugarcoat this, but don't give up. This is really important, I promise.
Okay. We won't. Thank you.
Yeah, you betcha. Emily, do you have a question, Emily?
Hi. Say, as we were having, can you hear me now?
Now I can. Yes, yes.
Okay. Um, as we were, you did it. As we were having this conversation about toileting, my little one just ended up peeing in his underwear a little bit, right? That's okay.
That
So we just
happens.
took him to the bathroom and was not super excited about it. But, it's one of those things where I was a toddler teacher for a long time and it's just have to kind of, if they're not really recognizing it, it's okay, Theo.
Okay.
Dinner's here. Right? When they're having those accidents and things like that, and they're not recognizing it, just like pointing it out. Oh, looks like your pants are wet. Time to go to the bathroom. And the more often you can bring their awareness to what it is and what the thing is, and calling it pee and recognizing how it's maybe cold or anything else, helps them to kind of recognize that. Oh, wait, that is not how it's supposed to be. I should probably go take care of it. And they're not going to be super excited about it. But it's just like, well, this is what we just do. Your pants are wet. When your pants are clean, you can come out of the bathroom and we'll get you all cleaned up and then you can keep working. But
Yeah.
making sure that that goal is as clear as possible and that you're pointing out what you notice about it without bringing that shame, like you were saying, Jessica, which is really great, but just really kind of giving them like, this is what I see. Time to get going.
Yeah.
The more often you be
Absolutely.
consistent with that, it's like helps them to recognize and realize it. But it does take a long time. It's not going to fix itself easily.
Right.
It's very timely on your video there, Jessica.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. An example in real time. Thank you so much, Emily. Yeah, and the language, like Emily was saying, the way we talk about it is so important. We can say, "Oh, like she said, I see that your pants are wet. Let's go change them." And then after they're changed, "Oh, you look like you're so fresh and dry and comfortable now." Attaching adjectives that describe it without the shame, but sooner or later they're going to be like, life is actually better when I'm fresh and dry and comfortable. It actually everything is a little bit better in life when I'm fresh and dry and comfortable. But pull-ups really are so misleading for children. It is one of the biggest sort of deceptions, I'll say, that we give children, to have them not be able to feel that wetness. And it just it really confuses them. So they need to make that connection between the feeling and the sensation that just happened right before, and then that feeling of being wet. And then, and I'm not gonna lie, my son, he's not home right now, so I can say this out loud, but don't tell him I told you. He wet the bed until he was 13 years old. He was toilet learned all through the day at 18 months, but he was such a heavy sleeper that he wet the bed until he was 13 years old. And it was literally a hormonal shift that all of a sudden one day it just stopped. I can't tell you how much laundry at a certain point he was doing it himself, because, Montessori teacher, this is what we do. We care of self, care of the environment, have him take care of his own laundry. But it was, I can remember so many times flinging that over my shoulder, like, okay, like a big bag full of laundry. Wow, parenting is just so glamorous. This is really the glamorous side of parenting right now. But and especially when they get older, it gets really unpleasant for the adults. But even with mattress covers, even, I tried a few times the whole like waking him up around 10:30 at night to bring him. I ended up carrying this child that was enormous, just flung over my shoulder, completely asleep, to the bathroom. And I was like, one or both of us is going to fall and bump our head on this toilet. This isn't working anymore. And having, and just the disruption of sleep wasn't worth it. And so I just knew this was gonna, and I talked to a lot of men, especially. This particularly can be a boy problem, not to gender stereotype, but that's what I hear, that they could wet for a long time at night. I mean, I used to be able to vacuum in my child's bedroom without waking him up, so I knew he was a very, very heavy sleeper. But during the day, he was dry from 18 months on. So, but I just tell you, I was really excited when he stopped wetting the bed at 13. Any other questions or comments? Thanks, Janine. All right. Well, I have made a Montessori Moment newsletter about toileting. So be sure to check in with your school leaders about that if you haven't gotten it yet. And just bring in those undies, bring in those piles of undies and extra clothes, and just be in it with us. We can do this together. Thank you all so much, and have a wonderful evening.